Welcome to the So Much More podcast, where we talk with people in the custom window treatment, soft home furnishings industry, and so much more. I'm your host, Ciel DeGuglielmo. My guest on the podcast today is Riana LeJeune. She is an award-winning upholsterer, entrepreneur, and the founder of Repinned Luxury Upholstery, a nationally recognized workroom known for preserving craftsmanship while pushing the industry forward. With over a decade in the skilled trades, Riana has built one of the country's first registered upholstery apprenticeship programs and is passionate about elevating artisan work through education, sustainability, and fair pricing. She's also the founder of Renewabl, a tech platform helping furniture professionals visualize design, close sales with confidence, and build more profitable businesses. Riana is a fierce advocate for neuro-inclusive, skilled trades, women-led businesses, and proving that craftsmanship and innovation can and should grow together. I really hope that you enjoy hearing from Riana today. Riana, thank you so much for joining me today again, because this is your second time on the podcast. I'm really excited to catch up with you and hear all of the new and exciting things that are happening for you.
I'm excited to be here. This is a wonderful opportunity.
A lot has changed since I first interviewed you, but if you could just give people a quick, I'll put a link to our original interview in the show notes, but if you could just give people a quick recap, tell us who you are, where you are in the world, and a little bit about how you got started.
Okay. My name is Riana LeJeune. I am the owner and lead luxury artisan at Repinned Luxury Upholstery in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm in my 13th year in business, so that puts us at founding year at 2013. And I always like to start with the fun fact that I went to high school with the creator of Pinterest, and we shared a stand-in orchestra. We both played the cello. And so in 2013, when Pinterest launched and it was an app going into everyone's phone, I was in a mommy group with our toddler, and the consensus was everyone loved the projects on there, but they didn't have the time, tools, space, skills, patience to do the projects. Mm-hmm. And so that was when I was like, oh, I could do your projects for you. And I had no formal training. I did not have any hobbies. I wouldn't consider myself a creative at that time. And I just started teaching myself. And so we were the OG flippers. We were sanding dressers and hutches and doing things like that. And then when chalk paint came out, we soon realized we couldn't compete with that. And so I had the idea to pivot and start learning upholstery. Mm-hmm. And my partner at the time, he continued to refinish so we'd have an income. And I started focusing on upholstery, but there's no schools for upholstery in Iowa. So it was a very hard journey at first until I found Cynthia with the funky chair in Minneapolis. And so a lot of stuff I was self-taught. And then I traveled to learn spring tying from her. And then I would learn and I'd bring it back and teach Justin. So I guess Justin would be my first apprentice. And soon we pivoted to being all upholstery. Mm-hmm. And so we are one of the few upholsterers left in Iowa. And I would like to say I'm kind of the young blood coming in and keeping it alive. But there's a lot of pressure and stress in that, being one of the owners of something.
Yeah. One of the things that I've kind of watched as you've developed your business and grown it was that the lack of education has really spurred you to make changes for your own business and in the industry. And, I often discuss the fact that the window treatment and the upholstery industry are like sisters. We do different types of work, and many upholsterers have a window treatment department. Many people who do window treatments do some minor upholstery in their shop. So there's a lot of overlap. But what I would like to hear from you, what has the journey been like in creating positions, creating education, trying to teach the people with so few people in Iowa doing this? What's that been like for you?
Well, it was a really pivotal moment when the pandemic hit. Mm-hmm. A lot of upholstery shops, I feel like, are, husband-wife teams or family members, just small. lifestyle businesses. But when the pandemic hit, as we're all aware, the demand for furniture became so great that we couldn't keep up with that. And so I was like, oh, we need to hire. But when you hire, kind of out of desperation and don't have a plan, it doesn't go very well.
Right.
So we soon learned that our small space could not accommodate 4 people working on projects. The workflow just wasn't efficient. And so that was when I started looking for a larger space. But, with an expansion comes increased, expenses.
Right.
And as soon as we got our building, one of the apprentices left. And so, that presented some challenges. And so that's when I reached out to the US Department of Labor and I was like, do you have a structured apprenticeship? And they said, well, we recognize upholstery as a skilled trade, but there's nothing in place. Can you write it? And at that time, it just seemed like an overwhelming task.
Right, right.
But I was like, well, every movement needs a leader. So, why not me? And so I took 2 years off from networking to really focus on my mental and physical well-being so that I could do this big thing.
Right.
And so it was a lot of back and forth with red tape in the government, because they thought we should be more structured like a college course.
Okay.
And I said, the majority of people that gravitate to skilled trades, are a lot of us are neurodivergent or we just did not want to go to a 4-year college. So structuring the apprenticeship like that isn't going to work.
Right.
And so, we came to kind of a middle ground on that. So it is a nationally registered apprenticeship. So it's 6,000 hours or 3 years full-time on the job work and technical training. And then one of the biggest hurdles was the related technical instruction, which is like the classroom material, course books, videos, things like that. A lot of other industries already have, a plethora of produced videos that, they use for their training. Well, we have a lot of professionals in our industry that, teach on YouTube or have their own platform for education, but they wouldn't recognize a lot of the material that I pulled from YouTube, even though they were, recognized upholsterers.
Right.
So that was a bit tricky, but Kim with Kim's Upholstery was kind enough to let us incorporate her training videos into the apprenticeship and whatnot.
Okay.
So yes, so we went through all those hoops and then we found out we got no funding. So that is one of the tricky things is, so now it's in place nationally. So anyone in any state in the US could access the structure. But what I've really been emphasizing this year is there is no apprenticeship without leadership. And I think in our industry, a lot of people are focusing on the technical skills, but the leadership skills are just as important.
Okay.
So, yes, the curriculum is in place, but we also have to be the facilitators of the apprenticeships. So that comes with some personal self-work as well.
Riana, how would people access that information? Where would they find it?
So that is on, it's on the U.S. Department of Labor's website, and it's classified as professional custom upholstery is what it's under.
All right. I will put a link to that in the show notes for people who are interested in looking at it.
And it does say 3 years, but it's also competency. So if you feel like your apprentice masters those skills prior to the 3-year mark, you can graduate them.
Okay. All right. That's fascinating. And I know when you were going through this, or a couple of times we sort of talked about it just really lightly, and you're like, can't really give you any information. I'm still working on it. That took a really long time for you to do.
Yes.
I mean, in terms of what you put together, no, it did not. But you're still running your business and raising your daughter and having a personal life. Like all of that still has to happen while you navigated something that was never part of your wheelhouse prior to this.
Well, I think that's one of the wonderful things about business is there's always something new to learn and to contribute. And during those 3 years, I was diagnosed at a late diagnosis of ADHD and autism.
Hmm.
And that was really an aha moment of like, oh, that's how I was able to teach myself an entire skilled trade.
Right.
Because I don't get bored. It's my special interest, and I'm just always constantly curious.
Yeah.
And so I love solving problems and helping people. And so, what better way to do that than to solve industry problems like
Right. Right.
apprenticeship and innovation and whatnot?
Rihanna, you've mentioned a few times, and I've seen it in the Professional Upholsterers Network Facebook group, the number of people who feel like they fit the neurodivergent category, for lack
Mhm.
of a better word, because I
Mhm.
don't like the word labels. But
Yeah.
why do you think that's so applicable to so many upholsterers? Like chicken egg, are
Yeah.
upholsterers neurodivergent and this is what they have found that they can make a
Mhm.
living and still function? Or is it this is an industry that is particularly well suited to that? What do you think it is?
I think it's both, because, for me, ADHD or ADHD and autism is a genetic condition. So I was born with it.
Okay.
And, you know, typically we need some sort of accommodations, whether it's from our employer or we, advocate for ourselves for these accommodations. But upholstery, my autism loves the systems and how, the majority of things go in the same order.
Okay.
But my ADHD loves the novelty of the fact that every piece is different and there's problem solving. So I
Are you
don't
conflicted
work.
every day? That's really difficult.
It is. It is. It is interesting to have both conditions,
Hmm.
but it sounds cliche. Everyone's like, oh, autism is a superpower, but it is a spectrum. So like everyone experiences it different.
Right.
But when you can find a career that you're passionate about and gives you purpose, then, it doesn't feel like work.
Right.
And so, for me, upholstery gave me a creative outlet. It gave me an income. It gave me a way to connect with people and to have like a mission and a
Hmm.
purpose,
Hmm.
instead of just clocking in at a 9 to 5 computer, which,
Right.
stifles creativity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and Justin, my former spouse, and he's still the master craftsman here. He's also late diagnosed ADHD, and
Okay.
so he loves the systems. He loves the creativity of building new things. And so we really having had that like aha moment and
Right.
sharing it and being vulnerable and putting it on the forum,
Mhm.
it was overwhelming how many people were like, oh, that tracks with us too.
Yeah.
And so it's wonderful that just in the last few years that the conversations that are happening and
Hmm.
we're a long way from destigmatizing autism and ADHD,
Absolutely.
but if you can give people opportunities to work, um, it's a wonderful thing.
And I also think too, because especially, when you get to a certain age range, there was no opportunity to be diagnosed, let alone any accommodations for learning styles or um, different abilities.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there were a lot of people who went to work for themselves because dealing with a 9 to 5 job and a boss
Mm-hmm.
and other people and the social cues and everything
Mm-hmm.
else that you had to deal with on a day-to-day basis just opened up this having your own business opened up the door to be able to function better
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to every day trying to adjust who you were to adapt to what was going on around you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just find it so fascinating, and have followed that conversation in that group. Like, oh yeah, yeah, that sounds like me. And people are saying, "Well, I'm not diagnosed, but this is sounding very familiar." Yeah.
Yeah, it all came about because of Isabel's diagnosis. So she was diagnosed with ADHD in first grade. And so we were having, IEPs and things,
Hmm.
accommodations for that in school. And it wasn't until she was about 12 that I asked the interventionist, like, do you think Izzy could be on the spectrum? And she was like, oh, yes, absolutely. But we can't say anything until the parent brings it up. So I was absolutely
Wow.
frustrated,
Yeah.
I'm like, you're the child expert. You're around children all the time. Like I only have the one and nothing to compare to.
Absolutely.
So, that was very frustrating. Yes. So, yes, Isabel was diagnosed, and then I just, as a mom, I wanted to learn everything possible to try to accommodate for her.
Of course.
And so, in doing all that research, I was like, oh, mom has that too.
So much makes sense right now.
Yes.
Um, it's fascinating to me because we struggled with both of our daughters getting different circumstances that they were struggling with, and getting people to trust that we were their parents, but also to say, I have no idea what this is about because, like you said, neither my husband or I had ever been diagnosed with anything. And we didn't have many people that we could look and say, oh, yeah, I see some of the same traits or whatever it happened to be. There was none of that. And so to keep asking questions year after year, and then finally, in high school finding out, yep, that's the issue. Okay, now we can do something about it. So I think we still have a long way to go with that.
We definitely do. And it's a lot easier for a child to get a diagnosis than it is for an adult, because when you start going through the diagnosis process, they have to muck through what you were born with and what is trauma you've accumulated over time.
Right. I did not think about that. Okay. Okay.
So it takes a little longer for an adult to get a diagnosis. And
Okay.
plus, most of the studies for ADHD and autism were geared towards boys. And so girls are more high masking is what it's called. And so I think that I went undiagnosed because, people are my special interest. So I'm always studying human behavior and how to, have better conversations. And so it's been an interesting, quote unquote, unmasking process the last few years. But I think being my authentic self and expressing my vulnerability and my journey just helps other people.
I couldn't agree more, but that doesn't make it easy to be vulnerable and put yourself out there, especially on social media where people are not always kind, nor do they always have helpful things to say. So I really admire that. When we first spoke at the first podcast that we did, you had a couple of apprentices. And I know that one of your apprentices left. And where are you now? What does your team look like right now?
Yes. So Alex was on that podcast with me. And so she finished, she was kind of my test run to see if I could be a good teacher and if I could run an apprenticeship. And so she finished her 3 years. She got her certificate. And then about 5 months later, her life circumstances changed. And so she went on to a different job. And it's kind of devastating, but she and I are still great friends, and I'm hoping to bring her back on the Renewabl side, and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
But that was really a moment for me where I had to go back to the U.S. Department of Labor and the Iowa Office of Apprenticeship and say, we cannot be a one-to-one teaching ratio, because if you have one apprentice for 3 years and they leave, you're back to square one.
Right.
And so I just kept advocating, and we finally this year got it approved to have a 3-to-1 teaching ratio. So I can have 3 apprentices, Justin could have 3 apprentices, and then our current apprentice Morgan, when he graduates, he could have 3 apprentices. So you see how it can grow exponentially when it's a larger number.
Right.
But you also have to drive demand to employ that number of people and or get grant money, and that has not been available to us yet.
Right. And there is going to be attrition. As you said, life circumstances changed, or we've all been in situations where we've started something and went, yeah, this is not the right thing for me. I need to change direction. I need to change course. And people need to be able to do that. But when you've invested the time and the energy into someone and growing their career to stay with you, yeah, you're right. That must be really devastating.
Well, the goal of the apprenticeship, and it being more standardized is, obviously if you treat your employees well, you want to retain them.
Right.
But with a standard, if Alex wanted to go work in a workroom in Washington or Massachusetts, like she could go and fit into someone's workroom.
Right. Right.
And I see a lot on the forums, everyone's like, I'm hiring, I want a fully trained seamstress, or I want a fully trained upholsterer. And, they're just not available. And so I read a lot of leadership books like Simon Sinek and John Maxwell. And what really resonates with me with Simon Sinek is, find people that align with your why and your mission, and then equip them with the skills.
Yes.
There's never going to be the perfect unicorn upholsterer ready to hire,
No.
so we have to create our ideal employees. And we do that by being a good leader and being willing to delegate and share knowledge.
Right. And I think that, I mean, I've seen conversations very similar on the window treatment side. And there have been a number of people that said, all of my employees did not know how to sew when they came to work with me, and they've been with me for 20 years. And there are skills that can be taught, but mission and vision and work ethics and those kind of things, they're a little harder to teach someone if they don't have that as part of their I do think you can learn those things, but if that's not already who they are, you've got a lot more ground to cover before they're doing what you need them to do.
Exactly. And with the apprenticeship, I'm hoping that we're training the future leaders. I think for a long time, industry professionals hoarded knowledge because they were afraid of training their competition.
Right.
But the way that I run my apprenticeship is like a Montessori classroom, where their method is, 3 ages in one room, and the younger children learn faster because they have the older children to, shadow and mimic. Right. And so, now that Morgan's entering his 2nd year of apprenticeship, we'll bring on another person, and it will help Morgan hone his skills by him teaching the new person, the welting cord and, cut charts and those level 1 tasks.
Right.
So then it just grows. So then the owner of the business can focus on the revenue generating tasks and not necessarily always on the training aspect.
Right. So to that end, are you spending any time upholstering?
So the last 6 months have been really an interesting journey, because I built and launched a tech startup called Renewabl.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And so in that, I've had to step out of my comfort zone and do pitches for funding. And discovery interviews. So I've spent a lot of time interviewing other upholsterers from around the globe to see what their pain points are in their businesses and how Renewabl fits into their workrooms and what they would like to see happen in regards to technology and innovation.
Okay.
So a little less upholstering, but still a lot of project managing and client contact. And so having to surrender tasks has been hard.
Yeah.
But I always say trust but verify.
Yes.
So I'm always going back there and checking on the work and making sure that it's still meeting standards, but letting them build confidence in working independently.
Riana, I think one of the downsides of social media is we only see certain parts of what people choose to share with us, what businesses choose to share. And when I've been watching all the changes and everything that you've been going through, it would be really easy to say, oh, look how easy it is for Riana. But as you just pointed out, you are still running the business. You don't get to step away, even though you're building something else that is important to the business, but is a whole separate entity at the same time. So when we first talked, I asked you about having a business plan, and you said that you did not. And I've watched you over the years. You've been involved with different business groups. You've been part of NAWBO, the Iowa business community, as well as the upholstery industry. How has your planning and business development changed since we first spoke?
So as I mentioned, when I started Repinned in 2013, I had no background. I came from law enforcement and my degree is in psychology. So I started Repinned out of necessity and survival. And so when you're in that mindset, you're not thinking about business plans. So I really regret that because that made the early years very difficult. And so 13 years later, in starting, a tech startup, first thing I did was reach out to business mentors. And I was like, who do I need to connect with that can support me in this endeavor, that know more than I do? And so the first thing I did was I got a fractional CFO. and he helped me build my business plan because Renewabl is what they call a SaaS, so a software as a sale. So
Yes.
it is a global product. So as soon as I hit publish, it went around the world. And
Right.
so that was exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Can only imagine.
Yes. But yeah, so first thing I did was write that business plan, learn from your mistakes, don't repeat them.
Yeah.
So, and that is moving forward. I like to say that I'm in my leadership era. So as I see people on the forums or just having conversations about like, oh, I want to go from a hobbyist, to offering services, I say, create a growth plan. Write down your business plan, but then also the growth plan is, 3 big goals and then actionable steps to get there. And that way you can, when it's on paper, you can see that you're accomplishing things.
Yeah.
And I think, again, circling back to people being neurodivergent in this industry, we get into it because we're good at something, but we
Yeah.
don't necessarily know the business aspect of it.
Right.
And when you're in high demand, it's very hard to slow down to write the business plan or write standard operating procedures and all those things. And so that's where, after I created the apprenticeship, I was like looking around and I was like, what can I do next? And I talk about this all the time. There's a quote from Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs, and he says, when you see everyone go one direction, turn and go the opposite way.
You mentioned that in the first podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's how I pivoted from painting dressers to upholstery. That's, when I finished the apprenticeship, I was like, well, what next? And I looked around and there's so many amazing uh, drapery and upholstery professionals providing courses and education. And I was like, okay, well, they've got that taken care of. So I don't need to focus on that. What else can I do? So turning and going the opposite way. So if everyone's going to, do courses, what about the innovation? What about the technology that's happening? And so
Right.
I've wanted to do technology in our industry for a long time. And that is a support tool. Because we're neurodiverse, our brains can kind of be scattered sometimes and we can get task paralysis or focus on the wrong aspects. And so by utilizing systems and technology, it just gives us the support to stay focused and to be more successful and profitable.
Okay. So tell us, what is Renewabl? How does it work? And
Yes.
anything you want to tell us about it.
So I leveraged my expertise and AI to build a platform called Renewabl. Right now, people look at it as mainly a visualization tool and lead funnel. But it will actually be a 2-sided market. That is the goal. So it's kind of like Uber. You don't have riders if you don't have drivers, and you don't have drivers if you don't have riders.
Okay.
So we've launched to professionals around the globe first to help them integrate Renewabl into their quoting process and their sales process so they can be more profitable. And seeing is believing. And there's a lot of neuroscience in sales. And, that's, again, my special interest. So people will be more likely to buy if they can see what they're buying. So by being able to use Renewabl and get an accurate visualization of real fabrics on the actual client's, furniture or on their windows or create pillows, they can see the outcome and they're more willing to invest. And, upholsterers and window treatment professionals, we have the brains that can see the vision and we know what the outcome is going to be, but the average consumer may not have that imagination.
Right.
And so Renewabl, is very intuitive. And that's what I wanted. I look at interior designers and architects and other adjacent professions, and, they have SketchUp and CAD and all these programs and, but they have advanced education and spend semesters learning these programs. Well, the average upholsterer may not have a college education. They may have learned the trade from a family member or self-taught and whatnot. Right. So, and we're busy, so we don't have time to take an entire semester to learn, CAD and SketchUp. So I wanted to create something that was intuitive, that whether, you were a professional or not, you could pick it up and utilize it. And so that's what we were able to achieve. And there was a little bit of pushback like, oh, well, ChatGPT or Gemini could put a fabric on a frame. And my response to that is our industry deserves industry specific tools.
Mm-hmm.
And Renewabl is trained to be an upholstery, furniture, and interior design expert. So it knows our terminology. It knows, it knows what an 8-way spring tie is and deep diamond tufting and fluting. So like you don't have to spend a ton of time prompting to get a visualization. And if you put something into ChatGPT in front of a client, you don't know what's going to come out of that. And so with Renewabl, you can confidently sit down next to your client at a fabric consultation, and they can say, I want this fabric, and you can, within 60 seconds, do a visualization of that specific fabric. So our goal is to partner with fabric companies, hardware companies, finish companies, so that it's all populated in libraries within the app. So people don't have to like exit out and come back in, and really focusing on efficiency, but also getting those companies to support artisans.
Right.
Because I think that the more profitable these businesses are, the more confident they are to hire and scale and to have teams.
Okay.
So I'm kind of solving a problem from two sides. So we created the apprenticeship and we're creating the demand and hoping to meet in the middle.
Right. Because as you said, like if you're going to have people working for you, you have to have the work to support their time. Okay.
Yes. And so it launched to professionals first to populate the directory. And then later we'll launch to the general public. And they won't have access to the same features. So there's varying levels of subscriptions based on professional needs versus the general public.
Okay.
And so once we populate that directory, then my hope the general public can use it while they're out thrifting or estate sales or their mom's house, do a quick visualization to get excited about that piece to determine if they want to invest in it.
Right.
Well, it also has a furniture identifier built in. So if they're out, they can take a picture and go, oh, that's an Adrian Persol, or that's, a French provincial. So they get to know a little bit about the history of, that piece. And then they do a quick visualization and it says find pro, and then it will connect them with someone in their area that can actually do the work.
Okay.
So that's where it's a lead funnel.
Okay. Awesome. So what's been the biggest challenge of creating that app for you?
Well, I really enjoyed learning the technology aspect of things, but believe it or not, the hardest part of the process is sales, and it's public speaking and, getting people to see the vision of what I think this app could be and what it could do for the industry. And I mean, that is a sale. You have to pitch your idea and your vision to potential investors or other professionals. And change is hard. And when, people are used to doing things with paper and pencil and set in their ways, change is hard. But, if you have a leader that's willing to walk you through the process, or if something's intuitive and easy, then you can adapt quicker and see the benefit of utilizing it in your business.
Okay. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but how are you balancing the growth of Repinned, developing an app, and I see your posts on Instagram. You're still taking care of yourself. You still have a life outside of all of this. How, I don't know, but you are. How are you managing to balance it?
I think focusing on mental and physical health is a big aspect of it. For many, many years in the early phase, I did not take care of myself. And I gained a lot of weight. I wasn't eating. I was stress eating. I wasn't focusing on exercise. And so the mindset was, sometimes I would go into a doom spiral. And I'm sure people who are listening can relate when, one thing happens, then you start thinking about all the other what ifs. And I think in the last few years, I don't drink alcohol anymore. I don't eat gluten. I don't eat fast food or soda. I'm really trying to focus on mental and physical health as well as the health of the business.
Right.
But in doing that, I just feel like my brain just works faster and more efficiently. And I get excited to go to work because I'm solving problems and I'm talking to other upholsterers, and they're, the enthusiasm about, what we're doing here is contagious, So when
Yeah.
someone's telling me that, they're using Renewabl in Iceland, I'm like, well, that motivates me to keep going.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. That's very cool.
So it's just, I listen to my body a lot more, and I no is a full sentence. So if I don't want to do something, I can say no, and I don't have to go into a large explanation as to
Okay.
why.
Is
Uh,
that comfortable for you
Not always.
yet?
I'm a recovering people pleaser. But I'm mentoring an upholsterer in Alabama, and I had a conversation with him around Christmas, and he was talking about how he was working just an absurd amount of hours. And I said, there's no such thing as a chair emergency. There's always going to be more work.
Yeah.
And as soon as that client picks up that chair, they've pretty much forgotten about us. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's not worth it to sacrifice your health or your family, for a paycheck. And so just finding that balance. And I think it's really hard because, again, a lot of us are neurodiverse and we're people pleasers and we're afraid to lose work, but you have to have boundaries
Yeah.
and structure your days so that you do, we're not always going to have a perfect balance,
Of
but I
course
think
not. Yeah.
picking what your priorities are and setting goals is very important. And I
Hmm.
think, there needs to be conversations in the forums, not just about the work and pricing and whatnot, but also
Agreed.
how we maintain our mental health.
Yeah. The conversation in the window treatment, and for so many years, I mean, we'd see it in the forum on the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library. Like, I was up till 2 a.m. finishing for an install today. And we don't function well when we live that way. I mean,
Mhm.
one time, because of whatever life circumstances got in the way, okay. But I think I noticed probably in my mid to late 40s, I was no longer physically capable of doing that. And
Yeah.
I think that's what forced me to put some boundaries in place because I knew that I wasn't, if I had been up till 2 o'clock in the morning and my kids were up at 6 a.m. the next morning to get ready for school, I was not the nicest mom in the world at that point. So I really did start to understand how important those boundaries were, and that I think you said it exactly right. Once that chair's delivered, once those window treatments are in place, they're not thinking about us. And our bodies and our minds and our businesses and our homes are still recovering from that. And
Mhm.
so I think it's really important. And years ago, one of my mentors, Elke Horn, had talked to me about setting up deadlines towards the holidays because I had a Christmas Eve where I was installing window treatments for someone else. I was not at home with my own family getting ready, but I was, and that was the last time that ever happened.
Mhm.
And when someone who is running a shop with multiple employees can close down 10 days before Christmas because that's when she's done,
Mhm.
it's like, I could probably do a whole lot better than I'm doing right now.
Well, one of the things that I maybe do differently is I don't do hard deadlines.
Mm,
I have a master list. I go in order that projects are booked by deposits. I call them deposit retainer for
right.
legality. Deposit retainers being made, and I work my way down the list. It takes how long it takes,
Yeah.
because when you're working with pieces from the 1800s to modern builds, we're not factories that can quantify start and stop dates because we're not
Right.
making the same thing every time.
Right.
And so I would rather have my team and myself focus on good work than a looming deadline.
Yeah.
And maybe once or twice a year when I'm working with, a big interior design build that they're like, well, we're having this opening date this day, but we still
Right.
plan ahead,
Yeah. Yeah.
to accommodate those hours. But there's no such thing as a chair emergency. And, just because someone's family is coming to town, yes, we would like ideally to have that done. But if you only gave us 2 weeks, like that's not an efficient turnaround. So, because deadlines stifle creativity, I feel like, and especially with the neurodivergent aspect, I want we don't work well under pressure,
Right. Right.
so I just want people to enjoy what they're doing and make quality pieces.
I think one of the things I've learned from speaking with so many people in the upholstery part of our businesses is that exact thing that, first of all, you don't even know what you're going to find until you start tearing something
Mhm.
apart. And that can change the timeline dramatically.
Mhm.
And setting realistic expectations really is so important. And I interviewed someone years ago who had young children. She was very successful. She was working very hard. And she would tell people 16 to 18 weeks before their projects would be delivered. And nobody batted an eye because that's what she told them up front.
Yep.
And I even had a designer reach out to me the other day, like, what's your timeline like? And I had to like force myself to give the realistic timeline. And if I don't get the job, I don't get the job because
Mhm.
I cannot physically get it done in a shorter amount of time. And so
Correct.
why would I tell her anything different than that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm very transparent up front. And when I'm doing my fabric consultation, we're not just looking at fabrics, we're having conversations about the industry and what we're
Okay.
doing and why it's unique. And in hindsight, so I do typically book about 9 months in advance. And
Okay.
that can be very stressful to manage, that far in advance. However, in all the research that I'm doing, and, as I said, I'm in my leadership era, I'm learning from mistakes in the past and moving forward to be different. So that's where the systems come in and the support tools.
Right.
Because if you are in high enough demand to be scheduling over, I would say 4 months, that's when you need to sit down and come up with a growth plan and strategically hire. And it may not be a full-time apprentice at first. It could be, someone to do tear down, because
Right.
that is the way that you start to learn and to see
Yeah.
how things are constructed. But everyone is overworked and underpaid in our industry. That's the conversation that's happening in the forums and when I'm doing all these interviews. And that's why I'm so motivated to create these innovations that will help support and help people implement these programs into their businesses, and some of the leadership, coursework or modules that they can
Right.
access, to be able to move forward more successfully. So Renewabl, I just built in a project estimator.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of people that are just like, I don't know what to charge. And, or people, one of the other pushbacks I got about the app was like, I'm busy enough. Why would I need a lead generator? Well, you're busy, but are you profitable? So you have to look at the projects that you're doing, how far out you're booking, and decide, about raising prices. And so in building the estimator into Renewabl, it we did an international study for benchmarks of what like the median average is for like a wingback chair.
Hmm.
And so the estimator auto populates with that, but everything is editable for your own personal shop.
Okay.
And it also takes into consideration what is called COGS, or cost of goods sold.
Hmm.
And so it inputs the average cost of all the materials that would go into an upholstery project. And again, those are editable, if you get a different price per product.
Right.
And so it's doing a project estimate off math and not emotion. And I think that so many people are like, well, what could I get? Or I don't want to charge that or sell the expensive fabric. And we have to keep in mind that, it costs money to run a business, to have overhead, to pay employees. So we have to shift into the business mindset and not the creative mindset.
Rihanna, I think too, again, this is a similarity between both uh, parts of our industry. So many of us who are capable of doing things ourselves don't recognize we have a valuable skill. And I've heard it repeatedly, but it does not sink in for some of us. And I think it's a little bit harder with upholsterers because there's definitely a theme of reusing and not putting things into landfills. But what we're doing is for the luxury market.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone can afford this, including some of us could not afford it if we weren't doing it ourselves. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That theme of what can I charge? No. What is the value of the service and the product that I'm providing? And
Mm-hmm.
if that doesn't fit into their budget, oh, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean we have to do it to fit into their budget. And I wish I could still understand why that's so hard for some of us to absorb. And I include myself in that. So it's not a judgment. We really struggle with looking at a number and saying, oh, I couldn't afford that. It doesn't matter. It's not for us. But we can't afford not to be profitable in our businesses or we won't be here.
Exactly. And it's that old saying, you have to spend money to make money. So, just because we're busy with the bajillion project doesn't mean that they're the right clients.
Right.
And so I noticed in a shift when I did my rebranding and, I went from being, just Repinned to being Repinned Luxury Upholstery, it did, kind of vet some of the people that were calling.
Yeah.
But also Facebook can only do so much. And eventually you get market saturation and everyone's not thinking about you because they're just scrolling through their news feeds and they've seen you a bajillion times. There is a large population of people and consumers that are not on social media that may not know that you exist, but need work done. And so that's where the networking comes in, getting involved in like chambers of commerce or NABO. And like I took out a billboard. I said,
I remember seeing the photo. Yeah.
And I picked a billboard that was right outside one of the busiest restaurants that had a patio during the summer. And I got a lot of calls. And so you have to think about return on investment. So yes, you paid, $1,000 for an ad, but if you get $10,000 in business, and that was one of the other pushbacks about Renewabl is like, well, why would I pay for your app? Well, you close one additional project, it pays for itself.
Exactly.
But you are probably going to be closing way more than just one project.
Right.
So it's again seeing the value in the product, and Renewabl will help close more sales, and it will also help people show higher end fabrics. Because a lot of fabric companies won't give smaller shops the books.
Right.
And so seeing is believing. So if the client isn't seeing those high-end fabrics, they don't know they're an option.
Right.
And so by being able to visualize, the image, the fabrics from online on their piece, then you can order in the one or two swatches from the high-end company that they really like.
Right. And not have to carry the books. Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
And so I know a lot of people in the industry do like on-site consultations. Mm-hmm. And so you wouldn't have to lug all the swatch books to the person's home. Right. You can bring your tablet and take a picture of their window and visualize, Roman shades and pinch pleat drapes on their windows, and they can get a feel for what that would look like. And you can visualize their furniture so they can see the whole room in these new fabrics and get excited, because people typically purchase off emotion. And then if they take too long, then they start thinking and rationalizing, and then that brain takes over, and then they're not as willing to spend.
Right.
There's that ooh and ah wow factor.
Yeah, exactly. And when you can see what it's going to look like, it's really hard to say, oh, I think I'll get the cheaper fabric when I've already seen what the high-end fabric is going to look like.
Exactly.
Riana, I'm curious if your definition of success has changed at all over the years.
I think it has. I did a post recently that everyone's like, oh, I was like, you've been seeing a lot of wins, because I won an award and I just got funding for the app. And so there has been a lot of positive publicity, but, there are hard times, and I think a lot of upholsterers struggle. And so that overnight success is not overnight ever. No. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it. And, for me, success isn't about profitability. Like, yes, I want to pay my student loans. Yes, I want to be secure financially and, have support for Isabel as she grows into adulthood. But for me, I just like waking up with purpose and, having goals that are attainable. And, sometimes we don't see how far we've come because we keep raising the bar. Mm-hmm. And so I really try to stop and look around and be like, oh, I did that. Let me just sit in this moment for a minute.
Before I move on to the next thing.
Move on to the next thing. Yes. So for me, success is legacy. and leaving a lasting impact, so that Repinned lives on after I'm gone. And so I've created jobs and, Alex and Morgan and the people that I'm sharing skills with, like I've changed their lives, their
Yeah.
trajectories, and that's what they've said to me. But helping other upholsterers be successful in their businesses and being like, wow, Rihanna said this, and now I'm going to be a little more brave and take those steps.
Right.
She did it, so I could do it too, So
Right.
just leaving a lasting impact for me is success.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. What's been your greatest success so far?
Um, I think, I mean, starting a tech company is a pretty big success. Conquering my fear of public speaking, I think, is a huge success.
Okay.
Last year, Susan Woodcock of the Custom Workroom Conference asked me to be the keynote speaker. And at first, I wanted to say no because of that fear.
Hmm.
And it's tied to my autism. And I know that now, that I have a fear of being perceived by large groups. And I think that's very common with autistic people, because small is safe.
Gotcha.
And when you have to stand in front of a room of 300 people, it sends our bodies into fight or flight. And
Okay.
so just, standing on that stage, saying yes to that opportunity and realizing that it wouldn't kill me,
Right.
and that it started conversations that hadn't happened before, was a huge success. And it was kind of a catalyst, because now I just keep saying yes to things
Yeah.
that take me outside of my comfort zone, but benefit my business, benefit my community, benefit, my friends and family. And last month, I was able to pitch to people from varying industries to get them to see the potential of Renewabl and the impact that it would make globally
Mhm.
on the home furnishings industry. And I was approved for funding, and angel investors want to help, and they
Yeah.
see, this centuries old skilled trade that is needed and just needs innovation and a different trajectory.
Right. So I was there at CWC. I heard you speak. You did a fabulous job. And I know that you were nervous, but you did a wonderful job. And I keep thinking of some of the things that you've done since then and thought, well, it's not standing in front of 300 people talking. So you conquered that well.
It's it's just, again, working on myself and my leadership, and
Hmm.
I go to therapy, and I self-reflect, and I think about, I actually have a daily reader on leadership.
Hmm.
And we were talking earlier about, all these extra hours that people put in to finish projects, but we're our biggest project, and we have to work on ourselves.
Yeah,
And,
agreed.
so even if you could take those like 2 hours that you may put into making someone else's pillows, put 2 hours in reading on leadership
Hmm.
and improvement, because working on the business is just as important as working in the business.
Yes,
And I feel people would be inspired and have more confidence in scaling their businesses. So we got to focus on some leadership.
agreed. So I'm curious though, we joked, okay, standing on stage in front of 300 people didn't kill you, but what happens when you do experience failure?
So in my early years, I felt like it was catastrophic. So
Yeah.
as mentioned, I was in law enforcement. Out of college, I got my dream job, and I did the full 6-month academy, and I got injured my very last day. So one day from getting my badge.
Oh,
And I had a quarter life crisis, because no one had really talked to me about failure or pivoting, or, that it's
right,
okay. And so
right.
I was just so hard on myself. And it took me a few years to even course correct and find something else that I wanted to do. And luckily I found upholstery. But now I just, and I talked to Isabel, my daughter, about this, when playing the violin didn't work out.
Right.
I said, we can try a lot of things in our life. We're not necessarily going to be good at all of them.
Right.
And sometimes we just have to say, okay, that didn't work out. What else can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how I'm approaching everything now. It's like, okay, if I talk to someone about the app and they don't want it, okay, 3 other people will.
Right.
Or if I pitch and I don't get funded, there's other funding opportunities. It's just the mindset is so important.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And to not take it personally and internalize it. And I'll cry. It's a good release of emotion, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
cry in front of Isabel. And I think that needs to be more normalized, and we need to see that because, you know, life is hard and business is hard, and it's cliche, but it's like choose your hard.
Yeah, right, right.
And every time I get frustrated or we have like a low sales cycle, I I'm like, well, I've come too far.
Yeah.
You don't come this far and then give up. You have to just think and innovate and just try new things. And so I people ask me why I'm so good at business, and I just say constant curiosity.
I
If
love
if I,
that.
if I
Yeah.
don't know how to do something, I'm gonna go figure out how to do it. And if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to ask other people. So, I just encourage people to have conversations, to reach out to me or to someone else that you may have more years in the industry that, I think we're all wanting to support each other and share knowledge. But
Agreed. Yeah.
sometimes it's embarrassing to ask for help. Uh,
Sometimes, yep.
but it's important too. And it doesn't have to always be someone in the upholstery or home furnishing industry. Within communities, there's so many resources.
Right.
Like Des Moines and Iowa in general is very entrepreneur friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And so being a part of the National Association of Women Business Owners, I get the opportunity to meet people from all industries.
Right.
And all the struggles are very similar. So it's not all unique to just to me or to this industry.
Right.
And there's women from all walks of life, and you get to hear their stories and you get to connect, and they're so eager to help. And so it not
Right.
only like it feels good to have community and
Mm-hmm.
support. And I think that's what I lacked in those early years until like the NUA was established and I found Cynthia and sought things outside of my community. But now I have NABO, I have the Chambers of Commerce, and they're really embracing me. And I'm the most vocal upholsterer in town. And the way that I view that is not competition. I view abundance. And
Mm-hmm.
so if someone chooses to work with me, wonderful. If they go to someone down the street, that's great too.
Mm-hmm.
I want all upholsterers to feel supported and not just hoard all my knowledge and resources to myself.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Riana, what do you do really well?
Watch movies. No. um, I think conversations one-on-one and really
Mm-hmm.
having I don't like small talk, and that's very common with neurodiverse people. I really like to get to know people and what their needs are and how I can support them. So I really am a people person. It's just the large groups that are a challenge.
Okay.
So, and again, that constant curiosity, that's what I do well.
Yeah. And look where it's led you. What do you not do so well?
Um, the sales aspect of things are hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very lucky with Repinned because I'm a destination. People seek us out. Yes, I do social media marketing and stuff, but I'm passionate about it, so it's easy to talk. It's when the shift with Renewabl and it being a tech startup is having to be in sales mode and to convince people that it will benefit their business.
Okay.
I'm not just, a greedy tech mogul that is after everyone's money and wants to, be the next Facebook. I just want to provide resources that will help. And yes, the subscriptions are paid, but I kind of view it as crowdfunding. Like when we all pool our resources together,
Right.
big problems get solved.
Right.
And so, Renewabl gives people a tangible thing to make their businesses better in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But as they're paying their subscriptions, we're pooling this money together to make strategic hires, to improve the software, to improve the education. And we do have a lot of education plans within Renewabl that we want to do.
Okay.
And so that, a program, even though it runs on AI, it runs on what's called tokens. And there, you have to monetize to pay for the tokens and the software and the platform, all those things. But it's the sales and letting people know that I'm one of them and that it's the greater good and
not just me taking your money. Yeah. So you have a lot of plans. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I'm looking out my window right now. The building across the street is for sale. So I would like a larger facility. I would like my apprenticeship to grow. I think the ultimate goal, at least for me and for people who want to scale their businesses, is for it to operate without them on site.
Okay.
And so that's where, people have to think about whether they're a lifestyle business or an enterprise. And lifestyle businesses can't operate without you.
Right.
And enterprises have systems and standard operating procedures. So I would like to be able to travel and meet other upholsterers and go to more conferences and support other people nationally or globally, and know that I have such good systems that my team is working efficiently to meet the demand in Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before I ask the final question, where can people find you? What are the best places to look for you?
So Repinned and Renewabl both have Facebook and Instagram. They have their own websites, and I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay, I'll put links to all of that in the show notes for people who want to reach out to you.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to someone who's new in the business or someone who's been in business for a while, or both?
Well, both. I mean, it is important to have a business plan, and not just when you're starting out. Business plans can change and evolve over time. So, every few years, you should have a growth plan, and again, have those actionable steps. And that's something that I learned this summer and fall. I took a local, it was called Scale DSM, and it was basically getting an MBA in my own business.
Right.
And so just really setting those goals so that you know what you need to do, and to even it is so important to be able to read the financials and not just like make sale after sale after sale and not know the actual financial structure of your business.
Agreed.
So I think, expanding your minds on financial education is it's a must.
Okay.
We get into business because we're good at making things, but we also, to have thriving businesses, have to be business minded.
Love that. Riana, thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure for me to catch up with you. And it's interesting that you're talking about like crowds and one-on-one. When we go and we're in large groups, sometimes it really is hard to connect with someone, and you see them and you get to say hi. But this is an opportunity for me just to really get to spend a little time with you. And I'm really grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Whenever I have the opportunity to speak with Riana, I'm always amazed by her energy and her focus and her ability to look at problems, look at the pain points we experience as business people, and kind of hone in on them. I really feel like that's her superpower. And I always feel very energized after I've spoken with her. I really hope that you enjoy hearing from Riana today, and I will post links to where you can find information about Repinned and the Renewabl app in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.